Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Making HM1 in 2021. Today is a really short 5-page instruction that has a couple pieces of information that I may think is important. Should be a pretty quick, maybe a 10-15 minute video. This is, as you see right here, Opnav instruction 4061.4, which is the Food Safety Training Program. We got some references, P486, P5010-1, food code. I think these two I've seen on other bibs, so maybe it's important to remember what those two are. I'd say the 5010 definitely, if for nothing else to know which P is a manual of PrevMed 5010. But the purpose of this instruction is to establish a minimum food safety training program. So basically this instruction is who gets trained for safety when dealing with food. There's a couple definitions that the instruction starts out with. First one, food safety instructor. Something that I learned recently is that that's a legit CanTrack Navy school to become a food safety instructor. So CanTrack B, bunch of letters and numbers I'm not going to remember. But it is called the Food Safety Manager Supervisor course. I think that is a super obvious name. So just remember the food safety instruction needs to complete the Food Safety Manager or Supervisor course because as the instructor they are indeed managing and supervising food safety. And they can also complete a food safety core competency knowledge by attainment versus a bunch of fancy certifications. The two certifications may be important, CFP or ANSI. I don't know what either of those are, so I'll do some research later on that. But just remember the two certifications that can override the CanTrack program are the CFP and the ANSI. Let's see. So PIC, person in charge, it's going to get addressed later in the instructions, so we'll talk more about that then. Food employee, I mean your employee that deals with food, so duh. Person in charge. I think that always cracks me up that it's called that because, yeah, duh, any place the person in charge is the person in charge. But in terms of food, the person in charge is the individual or multiple that is they're responsible. So the person in charge is indeed the person in charge. They need to have like that core knowledge. They're the ones that do the oversight, the management, stuff like that. Food establishment defined as a risk category 3 or 4 requires a PIC to be present at all times of operation. This instruction does not describe what risk categories are. So hopefully maybe we'll double tap that in a different instruction. But so just remember category 3 or 4, there needs to be a person in charge available at all times. Food establishments that are category 1 or 2, they only need one person and they don't need to be present at all times. So maybe the 3 and 4 is a full-blown restaurant, 1 and 2 is a bar. I don't even want to add supplemental information because I'm not sure. Food establishment, any food service that has food. Again, let's see. The person who is in charge of that CanTrack course needs to be an environmental health officer. There's the officer designator 1860. Or PrevMed Tech. I know all of the NECs changed. It's not 8432 anymore. But I know as of a couple test cycles ago, I still saw questions like that where they're asking what NEC was a specific rating. Maybe they got it from instructions like this where it has it in there. So even though we do the L whatevers, still remember 8432 is your PrevMed Tech. Even though that knowledge means nothing now, it's on the bib, so you need to know it because they're trying to make that money, right? And they also need to maintain requirements of the food safety instructor as specified in paragraph 3A. So I said earlier that they need to have the requirement as the instructor, and it is also specifically either EHO or a PMT. Let's see. And it looks like it doesn't have to be only them. So other people with the proper education background and credentials may be approved by either the Navy or the Marines Public Health Center. So Navy or Marine Corps Public Health Center to teach that course on a case-by-case basis. The Navy and Medical Corps Public Health Center as director is the POC. So it makes sense. The program director is the one who says, yes, this person is qualified even though they're not an EHO or a PMT. Accredited program. Oh, here we go. There's that CFP acronym that was listed earlier in the instruction. Conference for Food Protection is CFP. Let's see if ANSI is defined later, huh? So the accredited certification program is any program that's been evaluated or listed by the CFP. And they have met both CFP and ANSI standard. PrevMed Authority. So that's the department representative assigned to basically the PM person in charge of that area. The food safety training program oversight and recommendations to the PMA will be provided by the senior environmental health officer or the PrevMed tech. So to me, that makes me think the PMA is probably someone pretty high up the chain of command, specifically because it's the senior EHO that reports to them. So they're probably a little bit higher in rank than the typical PMT or whoever's doing that stuff. So PrevMed Authority, probably someone pretty high up there. References, the CFP, ANSI, Navy policies, not much there. Responsibilities, I think that is pretty much defined by the name of the instruction. So maintain minimum food safety training requirements. This instruction is all about what training people need to have. Reference B details the minimum food safety training requirements. Reference B is, the P5010. So if my question was, what instruction or what manual guides the training, it's not this instruction, it's reference B. So that could be kind of tricky. So reference B specifically details the minimum food safety training requirements, even though this instruction is the food safety training program. So a little bit of possible confusion there. Oh, let's see, I lost my scrolly. That's the downside of using screen cap software. Food employees, so this goes into specific training. I remember having to do this course so I could serve food while volunteering at the USO. So minimum of 4 hours initial food training prior to working in a food establishment. So 4 hours, just remember it needs to be a 4-hour course. In addition, you need to do that 4 hours annually. But it does say that those 4 hours doesn't have to be consecutive. So you could have 4 1-hour monthly courses, 8 consecutive half-hour courses, however you want to do it. But it doesn't have to be one specific 4-hour block of time. And then it talks about the 5 CDC Outbreak Risk Factors, which I'll probably talk about that at the end of the instruction. Because I think if I was writing this test, what would I want an HM1 to know? Probably the 5 foodborne risk illness risk factors. Because, at the end of the day, yeah, if your food's a little gross, big deal. But if you could cause an outbreak, that's like the big, oh no, you messed up. So I think that's probably the most important thing in this instruction. So those 5 factors are food from unsafe sources. So, if the food's not from a safe place. Inadequate cooking. So I didn't cook that pork chop enough. Improper holding time temperature. I know that I've seen that multiple times having the study. I am pretty sure the times is going to be in the actual P5010 when I go over that one a little bit later. So it's not cooked enough. It's not held at the right temperature. Contaminated equipment, cross-contamination. So I'm not cleaning my equipment right, or I'm getting stuff dirty. Or poor personal hygiene. So again, those risk factors are kind of a lot of sense if you think about it. So I don't know where my food came from. It wasn't cooked. It wasn't held at the right temperature. It was contaminated, or I'm just dirty. And the PSC, because they are the person in charge, is responsible for ensuring that all food employees meet the minimum food safety requirements. So the PSC is the boss. They need to make sure, the PIC is the boss. They need to make sure that everything's good to go. The PIC is going to maintain all the certifications for the food safety training cert. Training certification is valid for a maximum of 5 years unless a specific CFP or ANSI accredited exam specifies a shorter exam or interval period. To me, that's kind of confusing. It looks like that is different from the specific 4 hours training. This is that 5-year interval, because this is annual. This is every 5 years. I'm trying to read this. I don't understand how exactly that's different. So food employees need their 4 hours, and it's good for 1 year because you have to do it every year because it says here annually. But then the PIC shall obtain and maintain. Oh, okay. Well, excuse me for running around in circles. How I'm reading that is this is specific on the PIC. So up here is when it's talking about 6A. That's just people, that's the certification of people doing food. So 4 hours yearly, and then 4 hour booster that doesn't have to be done at one time throughout the year thereafter. The PIC specifically, theirs is good for 5 years, probably because that's like the mother of all training. It's the specific CAN-TRAC course. So if it's CAN-TRAC course, it probably maybe has its own NEC for being the food safety person because you went to a CAN-TRAC course. And that's valid for 5 years unless a specific specifies a shorter interval. I like to think that the shorter interval seems kind of weird, but also makes a lot of sense. So like if state or whatever regulations say, hey, if you work at this specific type of food, it needs to be every 2 years and you have to take an exam. The stricter instruction always supersedes the more broad one, especially from like a local instruction. So that makes sense to me. Temporary food employees that are only going to be working for a month or less, they need 2 hours of training before they work in the food. And that focuses on those 5 factors. So again, what are those 5 factors? We got food from unsafe sources, inadequate cooking, improper holding, contaminated equipment, and poor personal hygiene. So that first 2 hours is completely focused on that, which makes sense because if you're only going to be there for 30 days, you're not going to really need thorough training. See, bartenders, they receive 2 hours of initial food safety training prior to working in food. The focus is on washing and sanitizing glasses and personal hygiene, which I think anyone here that has ever been to a bar, that makes a lot of sense. Because unless they're also doing food, the only thing they're really lining is shots. So they line you up the shot and they got to clean it. And also if their hands are super dirty, I mean, that can be the cleanest shot glass ever. But if you get dirty hands, it's not going to make a difference. All right, here's the next header for the instruction is sources. So this is where that initial and annual food safety training may come from. So any qualified food safety instructor, so anyone that finished that CAN-TRAC course, any qualified instructor attached to any PrevMed area, or U.S. Army veterinary service personnel assigned to Navy installations. So I think that one may be a little confusing to note, that even though Navy medicine is generally who does all the mental or the PrevMed stuff for Navy and Marines, Army veterinary service people can also give that initial training for food safety. To me, that's one of those random facts. Like I would never have thought it'd be a veterinary service person that would give me training for food, but here it is in the instruction. Any Marine Corps or Navy food management team, and then so that's for anybody. Here's the PIC training, specifically from the CAN-TRAC. And completing any CFP or ANSI accredited food protection manager examination. Pretty cut and dry. Then this last page of the instruction, see, only 5 pages, is COs, the boss, needs to issue directives as necessary to implement this instruction. So whoever's in charge needs to make sure that the training, so those 4 hours once per year for the food workers, 4 hours not consecutively after that, as well as the food safety supervisor once every 5 years of that person in charge, or shorter if CFP or ANSI denotes that. And then food training documentation shall be retained on site, which makes sense. How do we know you did the training if you didn't do it? Just think of if anyone else has the training record collateral, it sucks. You have records on everything, even stuff that I don't know why I have this. I maintain it. So just remember, the department maintains everything, just like any other training record. But the PIC is the person who specifically does it. Here's a form, NAVMIN 4061. That one's kind of common sense because we're looking at Opnav instruction 4061. You know, now that I'm reading these instructions like this, I'm noticing that a lot of like the NavMeds, Opnav forms, stuff like that, it tends to be the same as the instruction. It's almost as if that's a way to make it really easy. But that is tricky though. Just remember, your instructions has your dot and your form has your slash. So NAVMIN 4061/1 is the form, which is a food safety training log. Opnav instruction 4061.4 is the instruction that outlines food stuff or food training. And then anything else can be used. Training certificate is maintained on site by the food establishment. The PrevMed authority reviews all the training records during inspections. Non-compliant goes on the food safety inspection form. And boom, that form. There's only one form, and it gives you a link on how you can get it. Navy Medicine. All right, guys. Thanks for enjoying my video. I had a couple people subscribe to my channel, but I had the screen cap stuff up, so I can't check your name. I know one person, I think your name was Aaron, so thank you for your subscription, and whoever the other person was as well. I'll put both of your names in the description. So again, thanks for watching my video. Have a good weekend. I'm going to try to do one more video on Saturday, one more video on Sunday. Of course, that's Japan time, so I don't really know what time zone that would be for you. But have a good weekend, guys. Just remember, study. That second week or third week of March, depending on when you're taking the test, is a lot quicker than it seems.